And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I am Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. We're brought to you by our friends over at BIRCH Gold. There's a little uncertainty going on right now. And, you know, if you bought roughly 33 ounces of gold 20 years ago, it would have cost you $20,000. Now it's worth $165,000, and it's because of how much uncertainty we've had, how much people are running to gold as a hedge of protection against that uncertainty as they have for centuries, and BIRCH Gold can help you right now find that hedge of protection, help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered retirement account in gold. Just text my name, Steve, to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. No obligation, just useful information. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, tens of thousands of happy customers, BIRCH Gold can help you diversify with gold. Get started today by texting my name, Steve, to the number 989898. That's text Steve to the number 989898. Also, want to let you know that on today's show, it's going to take an entire hour to deconstruct Tucker as he's deconstructing, because the acceleration of deconstruction has picked up considerably since Operation Epic Fury. There are several fronts we need to alert you guys on. And I'm even more confident than I was when we launched this segment after the first of the year that what you are watching is a classic deconstruction. And there's a clip going around that I saw when I got home from Project Hail Mary last night. In particular, a 5-minute clip where about 6 different worldviews that don't even possibly go together in any way, shape, or form, and don't align with even an accurate read of history, are articulated by Tucker Carlson. And this is the kind of stuff you do when you're deconstructing. And the only question when someone deconstructs is, are they being deceived or are they the deceiver? And a lot of times they end up starting out the deceived and end up, if they don't correct their deconstruction, end up becoming the deceiver and taking others with them. And I think we're getting close to that juncture, you know, that fork in the road, gentlemen, all right, where we have to start asking ourselves, is he going to self-correct, or do we have to stand up to him before he just takes too many people down with him? But we're going to get into all of that in the next hour of the show. That also means Pop Culture Tuesday. We're going to move that to the overtime today, but you don't want to miss it. We're going to have a lot to say about Project Hail Mary, which is an absolute triumph. But it also is a proof of concept that Hollywood could have been making these kinds of films and making a lot more money all along. And this existential self-harm they've done to themselves in terms of degradation and their own fiduciary interests was entirely self-inflicted. Knowingly. Maybe even. Bottom of the hour, Brad Wilcox will rejoin us. He joins the show about once or twice a year to remind us that essentially the old magic, we can't outrun it. And there's a new trend line with our young men where this is being proven true again. We'll get into that at the bottom of the hour. But before we do get into all of that, make sure you don't miss the overtime today. If you're not yet a subscriber, blazetv.com/Deace. That's where you can go. All right, get a discounted subscription today with my code name, Deace. All right, promo code Deace. Get $20 off your annual subscription. Get all of the great content that we do exclusively for you here at Blaze TV. Don't miss any of it. All right? Faith, family, freedom, that's what we're all about here. Don't miss any of it. Don't worry about any more quote-unquote glitches like we had with Apple iTunes last week. Just get it directly from us and all the stuff from us that we just do just for subscribers, like today's overtime at blazetv.com/Deace. Use the code Deace to save $20 on your annual subscription. And with that now, let's kick this thing off as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the terms of the deal President Trump laid out and maintained. There are back-channel communications going on between Washington and Tehran over terms of a deal to stop the fighting.
Points of agreement with Iran right now.
Many.
What can you give us a stuff
Many,
of those?
like 15 points. 15
That
points.
Iran has said yes to.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear
They've
weapon.
said yes.
And if Iran doesn't play ball this week, Trump says,
They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal, too. We're going to get together today by probably phone, because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out, I guess. But we'll at some point very, very soon meet. We're doing a 5-day period. We'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
In Congress, Senate Republicans held a meeting with the White House over a plan to end the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. The plan reportedly includes a provision to drop funding for parts of the immigration enforcement budget and then ram that part through via reconciliation at a later date. Senators like Katie Britt of Alabama confirmed the White House meeting took place. Meanwhile, senators like Rick Scott of Florida slammed the proposal and said passing immigration enforcement funding via reconciliation is a pipe dream.
Does it make any sense to you that the people that are getting rid of the criminals that are killing women in our country, they're not going to get funded in this bill? And the Democrats have said they want to use this as an opportunity to get amnesty.
Yeah, that
it makes no
notwithstanding.
sense.
So for everyone keeping score at home, not only are Senate Republicans not forcing the issue of the Save America Act, their brilliant idea, like Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, deep red Alabama, is to give the Democrats what they want, defund immigration and customs enforcement, and then pinky promise to fund it at a later date via reconciliation. Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, that's a nice Senate majority you've got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
你们在参议院拥有如此强大的多数席位。
In completely unrelated news, we told you about that illegal alien from Venezuela who was caught and released at the southern border by the Biden administration in 2023 before going on to shoplift and be released by pro-crime authorities in Chicago before going on to senselessly murder an 18-year-old Loyola Chicago student last week. Well, now we're learning 25-year-old Jose Medina, the 25-year-old illegal alien suspect, missed his first court appearance yesterday because he's receiving treatment on the taxpayer's dime for tuberculosis. We're just checking off boxes at this point. The Supreme Court yesterday appeared to be ready to overturn a Mississippi law that allows mail-in ballots to be counted as long as they are postmarked by and then received within 5 business days of Election Day. After over 2 hours of oral argument in Watson v. Republican National Committee, a majority of the justices seemed to agree with the challengers, which included the Republican Party of Mississippi and the Libertarian Party of Mississippi, that the Mississippi law conflicts with federal laws that say the Tuesday after the first Monday in November is the election day. A number of states have similar laws as well. Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch brought up an obvious point in arguments with Mississippi's Solicitor General over the law.
Let's say you have a state where a large portion of the electorate mails in their ballots on or close to Election Day. Not far-fetched. Many states are like that. Then, the day after the election, a story breaks that one of the lead candidates engaged in an inappropriate sexual escapade, or perhaps is concluding with a foreign power. Again, not far-fetched, I think. And the competing candidate immediately goes on the airwaves and urges voters to recall their ballots and to tell the common carriers not to deliver them. And many common carriers will do that with anything that you send through them. FedEx, you just call them up and say, I want it back. In that hypothetical, did the election happen on Election Day? Oh, by the way, it swings the election.
Well, when you put it that way. A family in Kentucky is turning away a $26 million offer to purchase a portion of their land. Delcia Bear and her mother in Mason County, Kentucky, say they don't believe the promises made to them by an anonymous prospective buyer and builder of a proposed data center near them, likely Google, Apple, or Meta. Delcia Bear tells WLEX-TV in Lexington,
If it's my way, I'll stay and hold and feed a nation. 26 million doesn't mean anything.
For Delcia, scam or not, she says she's connected to her home like Scarlett O'Hara was in Gone with the Wind.
As long as she was attached to that land, her spirit never would die. And that's the exact same thing for me right here. As long as I'm on this land, as long as it's feeding me, as long as it's taking care of me, there's nothing that can destroy me if I've got this land.
And finally, authorities in Maryland have arrested Dayton Weber, a quadruple amputee cornhole champion who police say shot and killed another man inside of his car, which begs 2 obvious questions. How did police handcuff a handless man? And secondly, how did this man use the restroom all these years? Inquiring minds would like to know. And that's what happened while we were away.
Nice. Aaron's montage brought to you by The Last Stand. I'm looking forward to speaking there the first weekend in June. And you know it's important if I am willing to risk the Denver TSA after exiling myself from that airport for the last decade, because it literally is America's last stand. So if you want to join me, Allie Beth, Frank Turek, Seth Gruber, it's his event, Victor Marks, Rob McCoy, Abby Johnson, and more. And we'll get a chance to screen Seth's new film as well. Get your tickets today at the Last Stand. Make sure the is in there. TheLastStand.com. Use the promo code Steve. All right, you'll get 15% off your ticket. TheLastStand.com, promo code Steve. Coming up June 5th and 6th in Englewood, Colorado, Brave Church there in suburban Denver. TheLastStand.com, promo code Steve to get 15% off your ticket. All right, let's get to the montage. Let's just do, and maybe we'll just do this on a regular basis now. Let's do a quick little Operation Epic Fury check-in after yesterday's conversation. Anybody, just a vibe check. Anybody feel anything differently than we did yesterday, this time, 24 hours ago?
No, Trump seems very casual. I mean, that's classic Trump speak. We hope we can bring them to the table. We're working it out, but if we can't, we'll just bomb our little hearts out. He sends signals that just like I'm totally unbothered. I know you've received a lot of robot speak from presidents right and left in the past about what very serious, and he's just like, no, I'm on mission here. He's giving a sense to both Americans and people across the pond that, I know what I'm doing here. Do you?
Aaron?
Yeah, I think if you put a gun to my head, I would say this is probably posturing, buying time to get more assets moved into the region. That's just my gut instinct.
I think the whole thing is posturing. And I think it's for multiple fronts. I think the number one reason we're posturing, as I said yesterday, is I think the president is trying to manipulate markets. Right? I mean, the bond market freaked out late last week. That's the long-term, that's what investors look at for their long-term prospects for the economy. So, I mean, hey, we're going to do this for 5 days. Well, that would mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so the deadline would be close of business on Friday. See what I'm trying to say, right? So you give the markets a week to essentially take a deep breath, maybe slow down the rate of growth of oil prices as well, right? And yeah, sure. I mean, do I think the president would take a deal from Iran if Iran? Now, I don't even know who we're even dealing with. I got to assume they do, all right? But do I think that if Iran said, "Hey, we'll self-depose and do everything you want if you'll stop bombing us," do I think the president would take that deal? Yeah, I do. Short of that, though, I think that this is just all posturing. I think it is to manipulate markets. I think it's to give our own resources a break. But primarily, I think it's to manipulate the markets here at home. Try to buy yourself some time, all right? Let the dust settle a little bit. You've dropped a lot of munitions over there as well, and you maybe get a better look. Smoke clears, the fog clears. Really, where are they at? Who's really doing what there? Maybe you catch them in the span of 5 days, stupidly gathering together for another leadership meeting. I don't know. All right, but I think that this is just all posturing, and including the reasons that Aaron articulated. I think the whole thing is a posture.
Yeah, but markets, again, I bring up the point I brought up yesterday. Our airline terminals. We just had a refinery in Texas go up in smoke for reasons yesterday. You had a plane literally run into a tanker. So there's all kinds of things going on in the world. It's not a purely psychological market-based exercise because of this one thing. It's a very big variable, but it's not the only variable that's affecting the thinking of market forces.
One little quick piece of breaking news I want to address before we switch topics. There is a story going around that, and I don't know who Elizabeth Surkoff is. I don't know. But she's enough of a somebody that the Vice President of the United States office directly addressed her. So have either of you guys ever heard the name Elizabeth Surkoff? You guys ever heard this name?
No, never.
All right. Bio says that passionate about human rights, senior fellow at something called the New Lines Institute for Global Stability. I've never heard her name in my life, but she's got over 100,000 X-followers, and this story meant enough that the Vice President's office chose to respond directly to it. She posted a story this morning saying that Vice President Vance lashed out at Bibi Netanyahu for not curbing settler terrorism in the West Bank. He pressed Netanyahu to resume the use of administrative detention against settlers. And the vice president's office, Taylor Van Kirk, who's the VP's press secretary, a few hours after the story posted, directly and vehemently denied this. Quote, "The story is completely false. The vice president's discussions over the last week with the prime minister have been solely focused on Operation Epic Fury. The subject of this article was not even discussed." So, I will say, though, I say this, I'm telling you, I'm a JD guy. I've made that pretty clear, right? I think he's the best messenger we have. I think with Charlie gone, he's the best opportunity we have to hold on, to hold on. A best opportunity with a major platform to stop the next generation of young men from going over the abyss, all right? So, but I'll give you analysis on what I think is true, not always what I want to be true, right? You guys have sat here for the last decade and seen that routinely happen, right?
Yep.
And I give analysis that I don't like, and people are like, well, why? I mean, I don't like this. It's just what I think is happening. I think the world on this has I do think the level of political vulnerability for the vice president has, to some degree, accelerated on this than what I thought it was even a week ago Monday. And I think the Joe Kent, and I was just reading a transcript of the interview that he did with Levin before we went on the air, right up until the time we went on the air. They did that discussion last night. And, I mean, essentially, Kent is claiming Israel, to sum up what I read, Joe Kent is claiming that Israel controls Donald Trump. They both went back and forth from what I could see, kind of giving their respective sides of the issue. The one thing, though, when Mark asked Joe Kent to supply any specific examples of the 18 intelligence agencies who do not think Iran is a threat, Kent could not do that. But Joe Kent and Tucker Carlson trying to Pentagon Papers Donald Trump last week, to me, that's a red line. That was when we discussed this last Monday, the last time, and that had not happened yet. But I think this conversation has devolved quite a bit. And it's very clear there are going to be attempts, particularly when you see some of the stuff Tucker has said recently that we'll get into next hour. It's now very clear on both ends, both people who are with Tucker on this and then people who are not. On both ends, the vice president here is going to get squeezed by people with narratives they want affirmed, okay? Yes, you're with us here, and whatever this new thing on the right is now where we agree that there's only terrorists because of colonizers, which sounds like a talking point right out of every left-wing read of history ever, because it is. But I'll get into all that next hour. But for now, politically, I think it's very clear both sides of this schism, and that's what you're watching happening right now. This will never come back together again. You're watching a schism take place. And you're going to see this with what's happening next hour. Where Tucker is going, that's no. Okay? No. And, I know our friend and colleague, Oran McIntyre, had Tucker on. I know he tried to press him on Islam and on that issue. And I'm just going to tell you right now, where he's going, he's not going to take a lot of people with him. But the people he's going to take with him are going to be absolute true believers. And they're going to force this conversation with the vice president every bit as much as the people on the opposite side who would prefer a Rubio because he's more native to their kind of foreign policy camp, right?
Yeah.
And again, the only person whose opinion matters is Trump. But Trump is watching everybody else's opinions too. Okay? And so I do think that this has become more perilous for the vice president than it was even a week ago. And I say this as a JD guy, which is one of the reasons why I'm saying it. Okay? Because I think he's the best in terms of caliber of candidate. I think he's the best candidate we have. But politically, his old buddy is not making this any easier for him on any level whatsoever. And then trying to Pentagon paper your own boss, the president, in the middle of a war on top of that is a yo. And to me, that's the change that has happened since I even had a more rosy outlook on this even a week ago.
I agree where you're at. I was more worried, which is why I said
you were at the time,
a week
to your
or
credit.
two
Yeah,
ago
yeah.
that I think that's why Tucker will actually run for president of the United States, at the very least, give the impression right up until the end that he will, because he believes the environment is ripe for these. Look at that. Trump totally turned things over. RFK Jr. in his own way after COVID changed the conversation. So now he's a part of it within the administration. I think Tucker realizes that he can maximize the potential of what he believes to be true, having a seat at the table by. And he keeps moving goalposts all the time, which is the second part of what you're saying, Steve. There's this instinct that sooner or later Tucker is going to like reach terra firma. And as you just said, it seems like that if whatever thought we had about that being possible after the 5 minutes you're going to talk about coming up here, I don't think it's possible anymore.
Let me address this now, because I just saw this from Blake Neff, just texted or tweeted this over at TPUSA. I had not seen this. Just showed up in my feed just as you were talking. Now we have Joe Kent saying he's willing to testify for the defense in the Tyler Robinson trial.
For the defense.
Yes.
For Tyler Robinson.
Yeah. He was specifically at, do you understand what you're saying could be used by the defense, okay, of Tyler Robinson? He says, so be it. You know, I guess I'd be called to testify at trial. I'm willing to do that. They only have his fingerprints, a confession, turned in by his family. No one in his family has offered any exculpatory evidence or claimed his innocence whatsoever. I mean, this is, yeah. And I don't know what the answer is yet. I don't. But as somebody that would like to see JD be our nominee in 2028, I guess the best thing I could say is I'm thankful this is all happening in March of 2026 rather than next year. Because I'm just going to tell you right now, the average evangelical that dominates the South Carolina primary and the Iowa caucus is two of the first three early states. They're not some 26-year-old who thinks Joe Webbin is onto something. I promise you they're not. I promise you they're not. They're the ones still watching Fox News. All right? And Genesis 12:3 is a life verse to them. You may not like it. There's lots of things in the world I don't like. Do we get to just craft a world where we like everything all the time? Or do we have to craft the world that we actually, or do we have to live in the world that was crafted for us? Which one is it, do you think?
The latter.
And the latter is those folks who think more like Lindsey Graham does on Israel than some 25-year-old who thought Corey Mailer was smart last year. They're going to vote about 70-1 in those two. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like 70-1 over those people that we see dominate online. And you're going to have to navigate that. And your friends here aren't making it any easier for you. So now we're going to cross another red line. So now we're going to have Tucker and Joe Kent essentially try to Pentagon Papers the president in a war and practice more resistance to this than most of the Arab world currently is. And now I'm willing to help Tyler Robinson's defense. I mean, come on, man. This stuff is not dissent. It's dark. This stuff is absolute darkness. It comes from darkness. It leads to darkness. It's nihilism incarnate. It's demonic. And the only question is whether the people we're talking about are just this deceived or themselves the deceivers. And most of the time they start out being just this deceived, but end up then becoming the deceivers themselves. So I know that got us sidetracked here, but this stuff absolutely, I think this has to be addressed.
Agreed.
Aaron, you have any thoughts?
I know I should have learned this lesson long ago, but it never ceases to amaze me just how retarded can get. And this goes back to an axiom I think we brought up multiple times 5-6 years ago. Is the stupid or demonic? It's both. It's always both. The more stupid things get, the more demonic their attribution is. And maybe this is an upstream, further upstream. Maybe this is an op on behalf of the CCP or the axis thereof. But ultimately, the furthest upstream where you can trace this is the doctrines of demons. And what we're seeing now is just straight up, unvarnished doctrines of demons The lack of critical thinking, the lack of ability or willingness to even consider that one might be wrong. Again, I keep asking the question when it comes to the Candace Owens thing, when it comes to the Tyler Robinson trial, what level of evidence, if you are convinced that we are not getting the full story, the real narrative, what level of evidence would you accept
Exactly.
to convince you?
No evidence unless it says Israel did it. There's no other evidence.
What level of evidence would convince you that you're wrong, that you should reconsider this? What level of evidence would convince you? What level of evidence would convince you? Blink 3 times if you need help. That's how you know that this is not just retarded, but retarded and demonic.
To quote Charlie himself, anti-Semitism is brain rot. So literally anything other than Yuri Manischewitz made the call from the bowel of the 47th level of the Mossad. That's the only evidence. I mean, I saw a clip yesterday of Joe Kent and Megyn Kelly, and Joe Kent saying, "Well, you know, after the fingerprints, he literally said this, after the fingerprints matched and they confessed, they just stopped investigating the case." After they confirmed the most viable forensic evidence in the history of mankind, fingerprints, and he confessed, they went from investigating the case to prosecuting it. It's a take, I guess. It's a damned retarded one, but it's a take, I suppose.
If you truly believe, okay, if you want to turn it around on me, I asked you what level of evidence would you accept to consider that maybe you're wrong, that maybe the narrative that we have actually been given, that Tyler Robinson is a crazed tranny who was very much groomed on some of the darkest corners of the internet via his roommate. Maybe that's wrong. You want to turn that around on me? I can say, okay, let me see your evidence. I'm going to need more evidence than what you just said. Hey, they got the fingerprints and stopped investigating. Hey, ballistics don't do this to gel models. Well, human beings aren't gel models, but what have you here? Hey, there's an insinuation that there was some sort of meeting at this resort and multiple 3 degrees of insinuation. I'm going to need to see evidence. Going to need to see actual evidence. And I want to say this as well.
Please do.
If you truly believe that what you are alleging, that the Charlie Kirk narrative, the Tyler Robinson narrative does not add up, what you are alleging here is the most heinous, wicked, intricate, complicated cover-up and hoax that has ever been perpetrated, perhaps in the history of mankind, at least since the propagation of mass media. If you truly believe that anyone, any nation state is capable of that, you should just stop engaging right now because it's hopeless and pointless if you truly believe that. But you don't really believe that because you think it's just entertainment. You're really just titillated. So put your money where your mouth. If you truly believe that this is some sort of massive intercontinental theory, conspiracy theory, then it's already all over. Why bother even wasting your breath or keystrokes on this?
6 months, these people have brought forth no evidence whatsoever. None. He was one of the chief intelligence officials in the United States. He has no evidence. Candace Owens never supplied any evidence. That's a very interesting coincidence that Andrew Colvin admitted yesterday that he sent a private text to Joe Kent on some things that were speculated in another text group, hoping maybe he could get him some answers. And then lo and behold, that very text ended up in Candace Owens' lap on her show. And then they turn around smiling together at Catholics for Catholics on Friday with Carrie Prejean and her double-digit IQ.
Weird how that's a lot closer to the kind of evidence Aaron's talking about, but the group that has all these conspiracy theories doesn't really care about that.
No, it doesn't. This whole thing is just wickedness. It's absolute wickedness. And I don't care what it costs me. I don't care who I alienate. I don't. And I don't care where it's found, including this very platform that I'm on. So be warned. I'm from this time forward, no quarter. I have no excuse for it, no accommodation for it. I will confront it with maximum prejudice.
The Steve Deace Show.
All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. I want to thank our friends over at Jevity, short for longevity. You ever wonder why your doctor only spends like 7 minutes with you? It's not because you're healthy. It's because that's what the billing code pays for. That's really what we are. And to quote the great prophet Bob Seger, feel like a number? We're a billing code now, right? And they just go to the national standards, courtesy of Obamacare, and find out what code you are, not a patient any longer. That's a business model. Jevity doesn't play that game. They test over 100 biomarkers, hormones, inflammation, nutrient levels, metabolic function. And then they can even, depending on where you're living, they can even have a licensed professional come to your home to do that blood draw for you. No 7-minute window, no copay shuffle. You get a dedicated care team that reviews your results, builds a protocol around what your body needs. I went through this myself, and then I took my data to my good buddy, Dr. Molly James, to test them before I recommended Jevity to you. And she was impressed with the data they came up with. And we changed some of the things around, within my own supplement protocol and the like based on this data as well. All right. So get armed with information and people that know what to do with it. All right. Go to gojevity.com. Use the code DACE for 20% off. That's GoJevity, GOGEVITI. Gojevity.com. Use the code DACE. All right. Follow the money. Send yours to someone who cares about you. All right. Gojevity.com/DACE, promo code DACE. All right. To get 20% off to get started at gojevity.com/DACE, promo code DACE. Well, of course, one of our focuses on our show right now is what to do with our young men. It's a focus in my own home. I've got my own son right now who just turned 19. We're launching him into adulthood. We spend a good deal of time talking about this on the show. Of course, it was our dear friend Charlie Kirk's prime directive with his calling at Turning Point USA was reaching the next generation of young men. And according to some data from our friend Brad Wilcox, who joins us now, they need reaching seriously. And Brad, it's good to see you again, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, Steve. Good to be with you today.
So, Brad, remind our audience, we've had you on several times over the years, just what you do, the kind of demographics you get into, and what you're looking for and why you do it.
Yeah, I teach sociology at UVA. I'm also a fellow in your family studies, and I'm really thinking about what's happening to marriage and family in America today. And I'm especially concerned too about sort of the falling fortunes, if you will, of young men in America.
Well, before we get into the demographics, I think we need to set a backdrop here. We skipped, by and large, a generation of masculinity in America. We skipped it in our homes, too many kids born without a dad or a deadbeat dad or a dad who didn't care. We skipped a generation of it in our pulpits because we just had to, fill massive suburban mausoleums rather than teach and lead, right? And so there was always going to be some sort of generational comeuppance for this. It was the stuff that we just kind of kick the can down the road and say, we'll get away with it. We were never going to get away with it, right? There was always going to be some demographic destiny for what's transpired with the last generation of male leadership or the lack thereof. But what you're quantifying, I think, goes even beyond that. But I'll let you speak to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, all good points. So I think what we're seeing is so many young men are, basically floundering in our society today. They're not doing well in school. They're not in my classrooms at UVA and college. Fewer younger men are working full time as well. So when it comes to sort of like education, work, life, and then love, we're seeing in this new report as well that a large share of young men are not dating in any meaningful way. About 2/3 of young men who are eligible to date, who aren't married, which is, of course, most of young men, are not dating anyone seriously. So they're just kind of floundering a number of fronts. And this is, of course, related to the way in which our schools often are underserving boys, the way in which our colleges are not male-friendly, the way in which too many young men don't have a father in the home, and also in the way in which our economy, big tech especially, is kind of addicting young men to that kind of hunt for dopa. And finally, I think it's attributable to the ways in which we're not giving young men a kind of a clear and compelling model of pro-social masculinity. So all these factors are kind of lining up to undercut the capacity today of our younger men and our teenage boys to be flourishing.
What you just said is when I eulogized Charlie at AmFest this year, I said the key to finishing Charlie's mission of reaching the young men will be the older men. The older men, we skipped a generation of older men finishing strong, finishing well. We skipped a generation of that collectively. And I think that for the younger men to see that what Charlie preached for them to do, get married, have kids, go to church. It's the older men now. What kind of relationships do we have with the wives of our youth? Are we still with them? What kind of relationships do we have with our older children? Did we trade the wife of our youth in for the much younger administrative assistant or intern, tale as old as time, right? Do our kids that are grown want nothing to do with us because we had no time for them as they were growing up, right? Did we cheapen their inheritance or not leave them one because we did something stupid and reckless with our own success, rather than store it up for future generations? That the older generation, I'm 52, I'm just starting my third act. Those of us in our third act have to finish well so that the younger men can see what Charlie was preaching to them on the front end, how the rewards you'll reap for that with the kind of meaningful life you're looking for on the back end. I think that's vital.
100%, Steve. And I think the challenge too is to recognize, and I'm seeing actually more in my classrooms. We still obviously have guys at UVA who are in college, but there are just fewer of them than there were when I was coming up. But I'm also noticing that, to be fair, I would say a majority of the men in my classes are doing well, but there's a larger minority, Steve, of guys who just seem to be super quiet, super lacking in confidence, and they need kind of more. They need more direction. They need more attention. They need to be kind of given some very clear kind of instructions, some very clear encouragements to kind of understand how important it is to be confident, how important it is to kind of put yourself out there in public, how important it is to ask someone out on a date, for instance, and sort of to be basically ushered into adult masculinity in ways that we have clearly failed to sort of serve them. And so that's certainly a big challenge facing, middle-aged guys like you and me to be more attentive to the need to help younger men grow into adult masculinity today.
I remember Charlie telling me once a story about a woman who came up to him at one of his conferences and says, "I know I shouldn't be saying this, but I caught my son with pornography. And given the state of things, I was almost relieved that at least I knew now for sure he was attracted to the opposite sex." And he just said that, he shared that with me once about just how low our expectations have gotten for young men. And this is in your data now, 18 to 29-year-olds. So I married my wife at 24. When we got married, I worked in a mailroom and then part-time I worked at the mailroom at Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Des Moines. And then part-time as a news assistant, a glorified gopher in the sports department of the Des Moines Register, and did not have a car. All right, didn't have a car, took the bus to work. All right, so that's who my wife married. Okay, when we were 24, which makes you wonder, were her expectations too low? Okay.
Well, she saw something, Steve. She saw something.
I didn't see, but she did see something. Yes.
Part of the story.
But these numbers here now, 42% of young men. But I would not have told you I'm a failure. I might have said, if you put the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around me, I might have said, I was voted most likely to succeed in high school. There's some potential in there somewhere. I'm kind of aimless. I'm not really sure. I haven't found what my purpose is yet, but I would not have said I'm a failure. 42% of young men at 18 to 29 already saying, quote, "All in all, I am inclined to think that I am a failure." That is astonishing.
Yeah, that was the most, for me, that was the statistic that really jumped out of this new report on demoralized young men from these family studies. It was just that large minority of young men who think of themselves as failures. And I think it's just a reflection of the way in which our schools are not doing enough to kind of challenge and engage our young men. Same is true for our colleges. And then too, how we as parents have kind of failed to basically challenge, but also help usher our teenage boys and young men into success. And two, it's, I think, a reflection of the way in which we're just seeing a record share of teenage boys and young men kind of devoting themselves to what Scott Galloway has called the addiction economy. And that's pornography, like you mentioned, it's gaming, and now it's gambling, any number of things kind of often on screens that kind of distract our teenage boys and young men from kind of engaging in the real world with real people, doing real things. And so because they're not sufficiently kind of engaged, they haven't achieved what Arthur Brooks calls earned success. And that's why such an astonishing large minority of young men, 42%, as you mentioned, are looking at themselves, looking in the mirror and thinking of themselves as failures today. We've got to basically create many more opportunities for young men in America to achieve success in the real world with real people.
Only 26% of men 18 to 29 are married with kids. That goes along with the study that we all talked about a few years ago that showed for the first time in American history, a 25-year-old man was more likely to be still living at home with a parent than in another home with a wife and a kid. Okay. So now we're at 26% of married, or only 26% of men 18 to 29 are married with kids. Only 33% of them are working full-time. 56% of them are not working at all.
So yeah, we have seen kind of some of them, of course, are in school and college, which is, I think, obviously fine in many cases. But yeah, we are seeing a record share of young men kind of not working full time, not getting married, not having a family, and or not kind of engaged in some kind of meaningful college or trade school. They're disengaged, they're checked out, they're too kind of devoted to screens and other kinds of distractions. And so that's I think a big reason why we are seeing this great number of young men reporting their failures. But I also think too, we have to be giving them a clearer message about what they're called to do, what their vocation is, what the kind of plan should be for them. And here, I think too many of our elites, obviously in schools, in the media, and elsewhere, have refused to kind of give men anything clear and concrete about what it means to be a man. And so they're either kind of disappearing into a virtual world or kind of falling prey to manosphere influencers who have very kind of extreme and misogynistic ideas about what it means to be a man.
Like an Andrew Tate, for example, is who you're talking about there, for example.
Pardon me?
Like Andrew Tate. That's kind of who you're talking about there.
Exactly. So the challenging for us is to be much more kind of clear and compelling about giving men a model of masculinity that encompasses things like family and faith, recognizing too that men can play an important distinctive role as providers and protectors for their families and for their communities.
Brad, do we have any data on the mental and emotional health of young men who have put off, or let's face it, and I say this, I've raised a couple of daughters to adulthood too, so I see this on both ends. All right, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy for a young woman to find a young man worthy of her if she grew up in a good home, and it's not easy for a young man if he grew up in a good home to find a wife who isn't pro-abortion, pro-Palestine, pro-queers for Palestine, and you know what I'm trying to say? It's not easy for our guys to find right now on both ends, frankly. All right. So do we know what happens to young men because the market isn't saturated, or because of the life choices that you just articulated? If you put off, purpose and adulting, what's that do emotionally and mentally?
Right. So we do see that for both actually young men and young women in their 20s and 30s, roughly speaking, they're about twice as likely to be very happy with their lives if they are married with kids compared to being single and childless. There's kind of a lot of messaging in the media and online kind of telling young adults, especially younger women, that marriage and parenthood are kind of a pathway to misery. And even to immiseration. Yet what we know is that younger adults who are pursuing marriage and family are more likely to be flourishing both financially and then especially emotionally as well. So that's something that's not kind of getting out there in the media enough. It's also the case, though, as you mentioned, that kind of there is this ideological divide that's emerged really since the Great Awakening, since around 2014, where a lot of younger women are moving to the left and some young men are moving to the right. And so what that means is that for women who are clearly on the left, there are about 2 liberal women for every liberal guy. And for guys who are conservative, young guys who are conservative and single, there are about 2 conservative guys for every 1 conservative woman. So that's also a challenge that young adults have to kind of face. And what I would recommend, though, to, for instance, conservative young men is that they would either try to find a conservative woman, or failing that, to look to a moderate woman, because having someone who's kind of either in your lane or kind of ideologically adjacent to you is going to be a help when it comes to forging a strong friendship and then later on a strong marriage and family life down the road.
I got about a minute here, Brad. What is one thing that the men, the dads and granddads in this audience could do to address everything we're talking about right here?
So I think one thing is really trying to kind of limit screens in your teenage boys and young adult son's life, and to have also things you're doing together. And that would mean, work outside, around the home, in the home, for instance, I think is really important, and kind of helping to kind of, usher your young man into adulthood. But then also just encouraging them to get out there, to be with friends, and to ask young women, that they know out on dates, to kind of give them every encouragement, recognizing they're going to often fail, but sometimes, they can succeed, and that can lead to so many good things, obviously.
Great stuff as always, Brad. Where can people find your work if they want to follow you from here?
FamilyStudies.org is a great place. And then I'm on Twitter at Brad Wilcox, IFS.
Good to see you. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. Thoughts, Todd and Aaron?
Man, transgenderism wasn't brought up there, but you can see how that entire mindset bleeds into everything Brad is talking about. Just a man not even fundamentally knowing what he's supposed to do, what he's supposed to be, and because he's lost in that cloud, he keeps choosing the fiction of the screens. This is Brave New World. This is the Soma. It is a drug. It is an addiction. And that's why they find meaning and purpose for things that aren't obviously true, which is why I hit on what I hit on. Fantasy football, you're not on the team. Toy lightsabers, you aren't a Jedi. Video games, same thing. But you keep choosing it because you absolutely find more direction and meaning and enjoyment than in reality itself. That is a giant problem.
I think one of the key things that is either a cause or effect from this, but I think it's just the hopelessness, the overall malaise of civilization right now. But if you're a believer, you cannot be hopeless. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to black pill or Vanta black pill. Joking around about it, that's another thing. But truly believing that there is no hope for something, truly believing that, like the people that I called out at the end of last segment, you're not allowed to be that. I think that's what a number of young men are suffering from right now. Who is going to model the hopeful future for them?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to model that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge for all the rest of us.
Amen to that. Amen to that. An hour I never thought I'd do, but we have to. Next. All right, we're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, alongside Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, if you love the podcast version, we would love it if you'd subscribe. So many of you have, and that's why we're frankly doing this gig, because of you. You're the biggest part of our audience. And then you can also, if you really love the show, hit us up with a 5-star review, as tens of thousands of you have, and that would be very much appreciated. We appreciate each and every one of those, as well as we appreciate our friends over at Patriot Mobile. And first and foremost, make the switch to Patriot Mobile because it's a great product. All right. Our family's been with them now for almost exactly 6 years, and we've never looked back. All right. We've had kids grow up, leave the home, change devices, upgrade devices, change lifestyle arrangements, and through it all, their customer service team has been terrific. The service in and of itself has been terrific. We've never looked back. But then on top of that, they share the same values that you do. And so therefore, you're not only getting a great product, but the value added of a company that then reinvests what you invest into them back into the values they share in common with you. which is why just about anywhere you go, anything that is of a significant event on the right, you'll see Patriot Mobile most of the time there as one of the sponsors to make it happen. All right, so make the switch today. If you're locked into a terrible deal with a communist corporation, they got buyout programs to maybe get you out of that too. You can keep your number, switch your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone, whatever you want to do. And you get started with a free month of service with my promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Promo code Steve. Get started with a free month of service. All right, we're going to spend an hour, the final hour of our show today, on a segment we debuted in January titled Deconstructing Tucker Deconstructing. And since it's been a minute since we've done this segment, just want to remind everybody what deconstructing means. It means that you are tearing down a belief system that you used to have and rejecting it in order to reinstall a new belief system. And sometimes this can be healthy. For example, as a Christian, we're to die daily. We're to deconstruct our old belief systems, to no longer be conformed to the thoughts and patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? But here's the difference and why we call it conversion or sanctification within Christianity and not deconstruction. Because the reason that you are leaving your old life behind is because you have found new life in Christ, right? You see what I'm saying? You're already committed to what the new belief system is. That's what's instigated you rejecting your old one. You're not rejecting your old one and then just kind of meandering and figuring out, where am I going to go from here because I've been lied to and misled. That's the difference between conversion or sanctification and deconstruction. And I first posited this theory at the beginning of the year that I thought what we were seeing with Tucker Carlson was classic deconstruction. And I think the conversation we're going to have this hour and the clips we have lined up to share with you here in a few minutes, I think are going to confirm that is exactly what is happening here. And remember what I said at the beginning. Deconstructions almost always happen from a sympathetic premise. Well, I was abused by the church and no one was punished for it. Or this televangelist took me or my nana to the cleaners and no one held them accountable. Or it almost always starts from some betrayal or disappointment. And I think all three of us here on this show would agree that the previous neocon globalist era of American policy, especially foreign but also domestic, was anywhere from a classic failure to a cosmic one to a tragic one. I think we would all agree on that.
Yeah.
So then you agree with that as well, Aaron?
Yes.
So now the question becomes, well, what are we going to do instead? And as we go through this, and as we get to the end, I'm going to reset what I'm about to say to you now. As we go through this, I want you I want you to have this in mind. Is what Tucker is saying. You contrast the fruit of Charlie's calling and how many people thought that he was using the gospel for political access and political gain, and then found out after he was martyred that it was the other way around. As you saw people that, in some cases, like Don Jr., by their own admission, never really gave it a lot of thought or spoke out a lot about their positions or Christianity, turned his entire memorial service into the largest gospel presentation in all of human history, arguably. It's very clear that in this space, Charlie's lasting legacy will be the amount of people that he inspired to get into the Word, to go back to church, and change their lives. Amen?
Amen.
So as we go through these things with Tucker now, I want you to ask yourself, is what you're about to hear, and what you're about to hear from Tucker Carlson, does it do the same for you? Are you more inspired now than you were before? Or are you more discouraged than you were before? Are you more willing to seek out truth than you were before? Or are you more willing to think there's just no more truth to seek out? Does thinking about these things the way Tucker wants you to think about them make you more Christ-like, or want to be, or less so? Jaded, hardened, cynical? Because you have Charlie's legacy. which didn't discourage at all, only inspired. And so I think that's a pretty good contemporary metric by which to compare these two things. Because it's very clear that Tucker is trying to step into the space vacated by Charlie. I think we all agree on that.
To some extent, yeah.
To some extent, yeah. All right, so we're going to spend the hour having this conversation. And I think that that we have crossed a red line as far as I am concerned. And I am at the point now that I think this stuff has become so dark and so wicked. I'm just not going to tolerate it. And I don't care if it even airs on this platform. I don't. I just don't anymore. I saw that clip, the Kentucky family that turned down $26 million.
Right.
Because their way of life was more important to them. Right. Listen, I made $500,000 last year. My wife and I did. We had a very good year. It's just, I would have made another zero if I made certain different choices. So this platform and this show is just not enough important to me to just not speak up when I see my friend's widow getting tormented and persecuted and his likely murderer essentially being given exculpatory evidence that doesn't exist. I'm sorry. But some kind of corporate or camaraderie or movement camaraderie, no, that's a cult, not a movement. And nope. I'm just not going to tolerate it. I have no tolerance for any association with Candace on any level whatsoever. She's a demoniac. I don't care if it's on this platform or any other. If you're simping for her, you're on the side of darkness. And I'm done giving. I'm out of patience. I texted that to somebody during the break. I'm out of patience with everybody. This Joe Kent thing and this entire op, and then showing up with a smiling photo with Candace Owens, whatever. And I'm saying this to the two of you too. Shackles off. That's not that in the public domain. Shackles are off. Do what must be done. Particularly on your side with this Catholics for Catholics thing. Take all the trash out with maximum prejudice that you would like.
Here.
This is just utter nihilistic darkness. And I think everybody now, with 6 months since Charlie's murder, I think everybody's had ample opportunity to present any form of evidence to any of their claims or their counterclaims, and yet none has ever been done. So I'm out of patience with it. And I just don't want to inhabit airspace with it. And so I won't. And that may put some people in some very difficult circumstances. I won't be one of them. I can promise you that. I am totally fine making a lot less money and talking to a lot fewer people than tolerating this darkness. And I want that stated for the record in public, on the air, for everybody to hear. I'm done. I have no more tolerance for this left. And I didn't have much to begin with. Now let's get to some of these elements I want you guys to see. First of all, I want to make sure everybody understands that what we're talking about here is not isolationism. I'm actually fine with isolationists. I think it's a logical conclusion or reaction to what we just saw fail, called globalism in the last era. I think it's a logical reaction, maybe an overreaction. I'm not sure exactly how realistic it is to be an isolationist when we are in a world where weapons breach oceans now. And all of us are able to smear, slander, blaspheme, liable anybody we want with one of these devices to untold how many people across the globe at a moment's notice, right? You know, so I given those two realities of how connected we are via the virtual world and how profligate weapons are that breach oceans are now, I just don't think the Ron Paul view of the world is realistic, okay? But I at least understand that why you would want to go there. And it's certainly not incorrect that we have so many problems of our own and many of our own making right now to deal with. We just don't have time to fix Iran or anyone else. And have you heard me complain to anybody whatsoever that has made that critique at all?
No.
How often, though, is that critique actually made? And how often is it, that's the Jews?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? It's almost never the former critique. It's almost always the latter. All right? And listen, I've been against the Ukraine scam from the beginning. I'm not in favor of boots on the ground in Iran. I wasn't even in favor of doing this until we did it. Now that we're in, I'm kind of like, well, I want us to win now. But plus, every time a member of the Iranian, Republic Command gets murdered, gets killed, an angel gets his wings. So, but none of this is isolationism. It's not. What you're watching, and what's being peddled now by its most high-profile advocates, and I think Tucker Carlson is among them, sadly. This is not isolationism. It's anti-Semitism. And it's pro-Islam, and it's anti-Western propaganda. And you'll see that from Tucker himself as we go through this. In his own words, you'll see this. And it's deceptively shrouding itself within rational isolationist fears. But that's not what this is. And you can tell who's doing that by who keeps giving an audience, looking at you, Matt Gaetz, looking at you, Tucker Carlson. I did research on Colonel Douglas McGregor. Turns out he hasn't been right about a single prediction he's made ever, on anything. I couldn't find one cataclysmic prediction on anything he made that ever turned out to be accurate. I couldn't find a single one. Wrong on them all. Remember he said 2 days into the war too, that Iran had destroyed all our bases and we had the Indians were helping us. Remember he said that? That was on One American News with Matt Gaetz, if you recall. You can also tell by who never criticizes Islam, mention its takeover of America. Bookmark that statement here. We'll come to that in a minute. Takes Beijing, dispatches from Beijing for news, like Tucker with this Chinese professor who literally lives in Beijing. Because Beijing, it's a place well known for the freedom of thought and opinion and a diversity of ideologies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a haven for it, in fact. And/or they torment and/or tolerate the tormenting or the tormentors of the widow of the most viewed martyr in all of human history. None of that is isolationism. That's just all nihilism. That's not dissent. It is darkness. And I think now we're placing cards on the table now. And I will be responding accordingly from here, including at the very beginning of this conversation. I'm not sharing a movement with this. I'm not in a movement with this. I'm not a part of this. I didn't get into this movement for this. There's not a ratio of clicks or engagements you could offer me. This is because this is stuff that puts your eternal soul in mortal danger and violates virtually every commandment of the laws of Christ. So that's going to be a no from me, dog. And since those peddling it have made it very clear that they're not really interested in a constructive conversation, but in getting over, so be it then. If those are the terms of engagement, I'm your Huckleberry. And I know your worldview better than you do. So bring it. And I look forward to it. Study up. You haven't done enough homework for this one yet. You're not ready for this. I promise you're not. And you'd be better off ignoring me and acting like I don't exist. Because you'll get wrecked. And I will be responding this way to this from this time forward, and I don't care where they are. This stuff is darkness. Now, I told you to bookmark something. I want to show you this. Had Grok do a AI sweep of everything Tucker Carlson has posted on X or on any of his shows regarding the Save America Act, which I think we all agree is the most important piece of legislation to our base in the year of our Lord 2026. Do we all agree on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because some people will say, well, Tucker, by his own admission, is never online. Well, except for the Sunday afternoon that he texted me because he liked something I posted online 3 weeks ago about how I was skeptical of Operation Epic Fury. So he's never online. He's never online except for when he texted me out of the blue 3 Sundays ago because he liked something I said online. So he's never online except for the time he texted me about something he liked that I said online. So, okay. But Fair. All right. That's why I also asked the Grok engine to do a sweep of Tucker's shows. I said, how many times has Tucker posted about or in support of the Save America Act or on any of his shows? The answer, Dean Wormer, is 0.0. Nothing. Couldn't find anything. Searches using the exact phrases like Save America Act, or variations return 0 matches from him. Semantic searches limited to his username for relevant content, e.g. mentions of supporting the act, election integrity bills tied to it, related discussions, also yielded no direct references. His recent post focused on other topics like foreign policy, free speech, wars, and interviews, but nothing on this legislation. There are no indications in any archives anywhere that Tucker Carlson has discussed or endorsed the Save America Act on any of his shows. Tell me the benign and innocent explanation for this. Remember, he kept telling us, wasn't it just last year, that, well, why are we shouldn't even be talking about Israel. We got to be, focusing on what's going on here at home.
Then what preceded was 666 shows talking about
Israel.
Israel.
And Hitler was misunderstood. And didn't you know that Winston Churchill was the bad guy all along? Yes, exactly.
This is what's really strange, because I identify with Tucker in terms of his instinct that much of modern America, not just the politics, but the culture, how crass it's become, and how it's a violation of all the best that made America. I don't totally get it. But then your answer to that is to totally forfeit the arena, which is what you're identifying here factually, totally forfeiting that arena in the name of what? Talking about how great it is to hang out in Qatar? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. But deconstructing is usually nonsensical. Yeah. So I mentioned this guy in Beijing, Chinese Professor Jiang. He's a Chinese Canadian living in Beijing. And Tucker had him on a show on March the 20th. That the U.S. should, quote, abandon its role as a global hegemon and bully and seek an equal partnership with China, Russia, and Iran. Well, by golly, what? No one's thought of this? I mean, let me see. The Obamas gave pallets of cash to Iran. The Bushes made China most favored nation. Hot diggity dog. This has never been tried before, except all the times it was.
There seems to be an attempt by Tucker to say that the problem with John Lennon's Imagine and the Coexist
bumpers, we haven't imagined hard enough.
Well, they've only been imagined from the left.
Yes.
And this time we're going to imagine and coexist from the right.
No, we won't. And I don't care how many speaking engagements it costs me, how many contracts it costs me, how many friends it costs me, how many clicks it costs me, how many engagements it costs me. No, we won't. No, we won't. No, we won't. This is godless, is what it is. From any direction, it's godless.
Correct.
We gave pallets of cash to the Iranians. We made China most favored nation status. Todd is correct. These are the same talking points of the people he claims to be criticizing, but with just some form of right-wing branding. We just haven't, just sit down and smoke a bowl, man. Why don't we just sit down with Joe Rogan where, cannabis is a food group and, the shy comms will just sit down with the Trump administration, man, and puff, pass, and they'll figure the whole thing out. As if there's not worldview reasons that this stuff happens. There's not convictional reasons why this stuff is happening. And so the flaws, therefore, must be in us. We're the bad guys. We have a movement for this already. It's the other side.
And it's so self-diagnosing as bad, because when you apply the Imagine song and the Coexist song, look how easily he treats Islam basically as just another religion, just another monotheism. Yet because it's so fake, it can't help but be exposed in in your very first point. What is at the heart of this? Not isolation, but anti-Semitism. Interesting how you bring Islam to the table in the middle of all that it is doing, not just in the Middle East, to the whole world, as just one amongst equals. Yet the one major religion that has no place there and you hate all the time, why doesn't Judaism also get a seat at that table then? See, the center will not hold.
No.
While he tries to normalize Islam as just one among equals, he hates Judaism more and more, which just exposed the whole fraud of his philosophy.
Listen, if this was just, the Jews killed Christ, they're the synagogue of Satan, and we need isolationism, I wouldn't agree. But those also are not views that have always been like completely abhorrent within the history of Christendom. I'd be like, okay, well then tell me how we're going to execute your plan. But see, that's not what this is. He's not even giving you what you think many of you are buying from him. He's not even giving you that.
I need to interject something here.
By all means.
You'll recall the Chinese explanation for the coronavirus was that some bats and pangolins got together in a cave and sang Imagine.
Yes.
There's that.
Yes. Well, Steve, listen, he was just interviewing somebody. That's not what he thinks. Okay. Let's go to the next clip here. Aaron, just go ahead and play that one. Okay.
We can no longer be the sole author of terms, of commerce, of anything. We have to share power.
With China.
Of course, because of their scale.
So might makes right. We just disabuse our worldview differences. We forget all the intellectual property that China has stolen from us, all of the interests they've aligned with us against, including the propping up of all kinds of terrorist regimes around the world, like North Korea and Iran, for example. We just, because of their scale, might makes right. So therefore, we have to just do an alliance with them and compromise. What values do you think he will go to China and demand that they compromise to make said alliance possible, do you think? I think Tucker will be giving a speech in Beijing saying, get rid of your one-child policy and let the Christians come from above ground. Think he'll be doing that?
Well, my great complaint is that we've already tried in many respects what he's talking about. We've done it too much, and where has it gotten us? Our debt,
Correct.
our manufacturing?
Correct. This is not paleo-conservatism. This is not Pat Buchanan. Some of you, again, you're 25 and you're frustrated like the last conversation we had, and I get it. All right, but history didn't start 10 minutes ago. Pat Buchanan challenged the Bushes on the stuff that Tucker is saying. I'm old enough to remember when Pat Buchanan was running in my state, and I went and saw him speak against the Bushes for selling out to China and selling out our values. And what Tucker is saying, we just haven't done it enough, I guess.
It's one thing to say this when you're in the middle of like a Biden administration.
Correct.
And you're having serious doubts.
Correct.
You're having serious doubts about the United States' ability to do anything on the world stage in a competent manner. When you're just truly looking at reality on the ground and saying, this is probably not the best thing, but I'm not sure if we're capable of making the choice to being still a unipolar power. Maybe multipolarity really is the way this thing is going to shake out. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to say something like this after you've seen over a year later, or almost a year later, Operation Midnight Hammer, where we showed the entire world we can fly anywhere in the world and bomb anything we want. And by the way, we know where everything you have is, and you won't know what hit until the bomb's dropped. It's a far different thing to say this prescriptively.
Correct.
After we've seen that, and after we saw getting Nicolas Maduro 2 months ago, and after we've seen hitting 8,000 targets in Iran.
And there's been no spillover effect.
It's one thing to say this descriptively when you're in moments of black pill. It's a far different thing, and might I say, a darker thing, to say this prescriptively after all of that water under the bridge.
Correct. When you've been proven wrong on virtually everything, and you double down no matter what the actual real world results are. Aaron, that is an incredible point you just made.
It is. And one of the problems is the way you can insulate yourself from the consequences of your actions. This is where a guy like Tucker in his wealth now and living off the grid in Maine, where you can afford to charter a plane to go to Israel or to wherever you want to, you're very much the same as the Anon I often talk about, who's just carved out this life where they're criticizing everybody and everything and act like they're the ones who have holding the world on their shoulders, but they won't tell you who they are in their real life. You've carved out a life for yourself which is free from consequences.
Everything he's saying is what the Council on Foreign Relations folks said when you and I were growing up. Everything the Bush, Cheney, Obama people said when Aaron was growing up. It's all the same. None of this is any different. The points you made, he's just rebranding all of the various theories we already saw fail, but with right-wing language is exactly correct. And Aaron's point that he's doing this while the proof of concept is disproving his own assertions in real time. At the real time it's happening.
I don't have a problem with isolationism in theory either. However, I think anybody espousing that view needs to be able to articulate as a thought experiment. If we snapped our fingers, if a genie came out of the bottle and granted you one wish, and you wished for isolationism by the morning, you need to be able to articulate compellingly how that would change the average American's life tomorrow morning. And by the way, if that explanation is anything less than like a half an hour, 45 minutes long, you're probably not doing an accurate depiction of how things would change because of the interconnectedness that you just talked about a few minutes ago, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's necessary. Is that the argument that he's making, though?
No.
Maybe that's necessary. Maybe that short-term pain, and it would be painful in my thought experiment for the average American tomorrow morning, economically, because what have we said for over a decade? It's not the gold standard. It's not the dollar standards. It's the military standard. The military is interconnected with our economy. It allows us to live lives of luxury that probably most of us don't deserve. But that's what's enabled it. If you're not willing and able to articulate that, then you're leaving yourself, at the very least, open to criticisms that this is coming from a much, much darker, or in Todd's words, nefarious place.
I did a poll over the weekend asking you guys, hey, do you agree with Tucker we should share globalist power with China? Or are you America first? 84% agreed we're America first. 16% said share power with China. Help me understand, for you 16%, what's that look like? How do you just sit down with a regime, a godless, atheistic regime? How do you do that? The grand finale clip, though, that put me over the top, that's what's coming next. Hey, make sure you take as much of your health in your hands as you can. Our friends at Chirp can help you with that preventative health, whether we're talking about trigger point or foam rollers, the rolling power mini massager from Chirp I take with me wherever I go, including on the road, whether we're talking about the Chirp Contour, where you get spinal decompression and massage right there like you would at a clinic in the comfort of your own home. They've got a full menu of preventative health items that are key into making sure you can get active and stay healthy. And if you want to check it out, man, go to gochirp.com/Steve. All right, gochirp.com/Steve is where you want to go, like Birdie Chirp, CHIRP. Gochirp.com/Steve. Again, head over there today. I'm telling you, these things are vital to make sure you can maintain an active and high-quality, pain-free life as much as possible. Gochirp.com/Steve. I want to make sure everybody understands what has caused me to draw the line I'm drawing on this show today. I mean, I've sat here for the last few years on both sides of the Orrin McIntyre, Joel Berry debate. I've got friends on both sides of it. I entertain their objections to one another. I hear out what they want to say. I think we need to have these discussions and debates. That's not what is occurring here. This is demoniac. Did God really say nihilism? I want to make sure my two triggers are, don't let the guy who murdered our brother go free. When he confessed, his fingerprints are on the weapon and all the ballistics implicate him. And then don't torment his poor widow. whose children will never, ever be able to live without seeing the video of their father murdered, because it's the most viewed murder in all of human history. Those are my only 2 rules of engagement. Beyond that, you're free to have all the debates you want. All agree, disagree. Doesn't have to get personal. That's it. Those are the only 2 things I asked to not draw the line I'm drawing here today. Don't let the deranged demoniac who murdered our brother go free. And don't torment his poor widow. And we couldn't even do that. So no, I'm out of patience. I wasn't really good at having any in the first place. And I'm going to give you the fight you said you wanted. I'm going to give it to you now. Just be careful what you wish for. Because I'm not Marty Maid. I'm not Jews are great 14 on X. I pack quite a wallop. Buckle those chin straps a little bit harder. Because I'm coming. Especially after this clip. Watch this.
I travel so much that I see it. There's not a single Western city that's thriving. And they're all degrading in exactly the same way.
Is a lot of it just a moral decay? Or is it actually true from everything?
It's a lot of things, but it's self-hatred. Every city.
Crazy.
Every European city, every American city. It's just what people lose their will to live, their will to pass on their culture, their values, their religion to their children, their will to have children. It's all gone. I mean, it's not gone with everybody, but I mean, in the cities, you really see it. It's like the people who built this are long gone, and their descendants have fled, and they don't care enough to keep it going. There's just a lack of self-respect that is disgusting to me, and I have contempt for it. It doesn't bother me to be hated. What really bothers me is when people hate themselves. If you hate if you hate yourself, how are you going to treat me?
That's correct.
Oh man, I don't like it. So I notice it because I travel outside the Western world, the white world. I'll just be honest, the white world.
Right.
I travel a lot in the Middle East. It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm not Muslim, obviously. In fact, I'm like a Christian, flat out Christian. And my ancestors are from Europe. And so I have nothing in common on that level with the Gulf. But you go to the Gulf, and it's incredible to be in a place that has pride in itself, that believes in its religion and culture, that thinks we're onto something. This is great. Look at what we're doing. We're really proud of this. Those people are happy. They're welcoming of others. They're tolerant of diversity. Like we always talk about tolerant of diversity. There's none of that here. Are you kidding? All the whites, we love black people. Then they run and move to Bozeman because there are no black people.
Absolutely. Send their kid to the...
They hate diversity.
They hate it.
And our version of it isn't working at all. At all. So, but you go to a country like Japan or the Emirates or Qatar or Saudi Arabia, and you see that when people are self-confident, when they're really pleased with what they're doing and they believe that their system is the right system, that self-confidence results in a kind of welcoming attitude. So you'll be sitting at dinner in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and you'll say, I'm really kind of pro-Jesus, like I'm a Christian. They'll be like, oh, that's so great.
And they don't have the same...
Well, they mean it.
And they don't have the same belief.
No, they're Muslims.
They're Muslims.
It's a country governed by Sharia law.
Right.
And they're like, that's great.
Good for you. Yeah.
It's great. And you notice like in ISIS or Al-Qaeda or like the Muslim extremists, they're all from like collapsed, pathetic societies dominated by colonial powers. They've been degraded, and that's why they're so angry, right? So there's something about being degraded that turns you into a violent nutcase extremist. You're seeing a lot of violent nutcase extremists in our country, not surprising because the country's being degraded.
Correct.
So in a country with self-confidence, people are tolerant and open-minded and happy. And in a country where people are told to hate themselves, they start to hate others. Duh. This is all like very obvious, but I only know that because I've traveled a lot. And I am naturally open-minded. Like just because you don't do it my way doesn't mean it's bad. Like I really feel that way. Where they're into things that I'm not into, like, I don't know, polygamy or Islam. And I can sort of look at it and be like, no one's forcing this on me. I'm not mad at you for being a polygamist. I think it's really hard.
Yeah.
But whatever, leaving that aside, but I can go to a place like that and I don't feel like I need to judge everybody on their local customs. I just don't feel that need. But in the process of doing that, like you get perspective on your own society, and the core problem is a loss of faith in our people, in our values, in our religion. Just don't believe anything. I don't care what you tell me. Like, I'm noticing that New York City has people shitting on the sidewalk or having sex in ATM vestibules, and people are dying of drug ODs on the street and their carjackings. You're telling me it's thriving. I was just there. It's not. I don't care what stats you throw. Well, according to the American Academy of Bullshit, it's actually the best it's ever been. Really? I was there last week. It's not. All I'm saying is let's treat the people who run the banks, the people who are getting rich from usury, like the criminals they are, and make them suffer, because that's totally fair. If you exploit and destroy people, you're not a good person, and we should just say that. And I think we should start by getting collective action. Everybody who's deep in credit card debt, I don't care what your race, it would be actually a way to unify the country. We're just going to have this month, we're all getting together, and we're not going to pay our credit card bill.
That would be amazing.
Bitch? What are you going to do about it? But your average person can't do that. So why don't we all get together and do that? You know what would happen if we did that? I'd be assassinated immediately just for saying that.
So here's how you know that he's either deceived or he's a deceiver. Because there's quite a bit in that is true. There's quite a bit in that is true. In fact, if you stop this clip at the first 3 minutes or thereabouts, you'd ask yourself, well, what's the problem with this? I agree with every single word of this. That's why I voted for Trump. That's why you don't want to stop the clip at the first 3 minutes. See, it's never about identifying problems. It's always about proposing solutions. I think we can all agree, given the abundance in America, we should never have a homeless problem, right?
Sure. Much less than we do now, at the very least.
Yeah. So the solution, therefore, must be a perpetual welfare state that bankrupts the country.
It is not.
So see what I'm saying? It's never about the problem, identifying the problem. It's always about the proposal of the solution. His solution, be more like Saudi Arabia, where they look at him and say, that's cool, you love Jesus. Maybe they look at Tucker Carlson, mouthpiece for their propaganda, that way. But something tells me that the pastors of none of the publicly available and open churches in Saudi Arabia are treated that way by the Saudi Arabian government. Like when he said Qatar had more Christians than Israel. Well, Qatar does have 300,000 Christians, about 150,000 more than Israel. None of them are citizens. Most of them are migrant workers, indentured servants. There's not a single Christian citizen in Qatar. There's 180,000 Christian citizens in Israel.
Everything you're saying is why this video is Tucker Carlson's Drag Queen Story Hours, A Blessing of Liberty
100%
moment.
it is. 100%
right
it
there,
is.
you saw it.
100%
because
it is.
He takes some truth there about our decadence in America and things like that. David French was talking about, if you're in America, you got to give a little, get a little.
That's all true. That's all true.
But then your solution is Drag Queen Story Hour. Yeah, sure. Tucker just gave you his version.
100% that's an accurate assessment. 100% it's an accurate analogy. Be like United Arab Emirates. By the way, the United Arab Emirates had to abandon a lot of Sharia law to become the country it is. But the piece de resistance in that entire clip is when he says that we got terrorism from colonized countries. Yes. That's the giveaway. That's the tell right there. That's the tell. Like this goes back to when Todd, you said, we're going to do Imagine with right-wing branding instead. Yeah. Okay. See, guess who tells you terrorists aren't really guilty? They've been degraded by their colonizing ancestors. That's what the left thinks of America. That's what the left thinks of the West.
And oh, by the way, Islam from its very birth started colonizing.
There it freaking is.
Correct, because
Europe didn't start colonizing until 800 years after Islam started beheading Jews.
Correct.
and expelling Jews from various cities around the Arabian Peninsula. It's just utter tripe.
By the way, those who were actually colonizing the Muslim lands, they were called the Ottoman Empire. They were the Muslims. Okay. So, and the Ottomans were murdering Christians in the streets as recently as the 19 teens, as a matter of fact, well into the 20th century. They were still doing it. See, now we have come to the fork in the road here. Is he just this, and this always happens with deconstruction. Are you just this deceived, or are you now the deceiver? And I don't think the answer to that is known yet, but it will be shortly at the pace we're on. So let me go back to the questions I asked you at the beginning. Does what you've heard from Tucker Carlson for the last hour, does it make you more inspired? In fact, did you hear anything out of the Word of God at all, in any of this from Tucker at all? Charlie's commentary was marinated in the Word of God, imbued with it. Do you hear any callbacks to God's Word from anything from Tucker at all? Anything? Does he inspire you to get more into the Word of God? You inspired to go to church more than ever before? Does he tell you where he goes to church? Who his pastor is, where he gets pastoral accountability and ministry from? Do you think any of this is Christ-like at all? Does it inspire? Is it conviction to inspire better, or is it demoralizing, discouraging, and make you think, abandon hope, all ye who enter? Gentlemen, I turn the floor over to you.
Tucker just needs a friend to knock him upside the head. I don't know who that is, but maybe it's, I've read this before, but maybe it's Sir Charles James Napier, because he needs to be anchored to history. In the 19th century, he was an admiral stationed in India, and they had this habit there of when a guy died, they burned his widow with him. "Be it so," said Sir Charles James Napier. "This burning of widows is your custom. Prepare the funeral pile. But my nation also has a custom. When men burn women alive, we hang them and confiscate all their property. My carpenters shall therefore erect gibbets on which to hang all concerned when the widow is consumed. Let us all act according to national customs." See, in the wake of the insanity that you just heard from Tucker Carlson, instead of whoever Goober or Gomer Pyle is across from him nodding his head in his cowboy boots is, he would read him Charles James Napier. Like, what? Tucker, I'm going to remember the man you once were and try to remind you of that, because you have now been compared publicly to David French. Cautionary tale, run away.
Well, Todd, I bring you glad tidings of great joy, because I'm going to do you one better. Can either of you tell me in a straight face, with a straight face, why this comparison, at least in this narrow example, somewhat narrow example that I'll throw out here, is not an apt comparison? You'll recall a few weeks ago on Bleep Nefarious Says, I dedicated that entire montage to one Texas Senate Democrat nominee, James Tallarico. And part of that was his interview with the New York Times, where he was talking about his quote-unquote Christian faith. And you'll recall what he said about his Christian faith. For those of you listening, I'm using the air quotes with my fingers. Tallarico said, I think my Christian faith tells me a lot about how to be a good person and what is good, but I also think that Judaism and Buddhism and Islam can also point to that one truth. I think they're all just different, I'm paraphrasing, they're all just different ways that points to that one truth. And then he said, and I believe that that truth is inherently a mystery. Mm-hmm. What is he actually communicating there? He's communicating there is no truth. Truth is unattainable. That is straight up demonic. Straight up demonic. How much daylight really, though, is there between what James Tallarico said And from what Tucker Carlson said in that clip, hey, I don't like it that people hate themselves. None of us do as well.
That's what Tallarico would say about the trans and everybody else. That's why we have to permit. We can't want them to hate themselves.
There's hopelessness. Yeah, we don't want that. We want there to be hope. That's why we try to let our light shine as bright as possible. But then when you tell them that the solution is do as the Islamists do, how much different is that really from saying there is no truth?
It's not.
There's no daylight.
It's not. It's not. A red line has clearly been crossed this week, and I'm going to behave accordingly from this time forward. No, I oppose this with all my might. Period. End of story. And you will see that reflected in my commentary in the days, weeks, and months to come. Go hard, Romans 8:28.